Hello everyone, today we will be going over the team that I used to make day 2 at the most recent regional championships held in Louisville, Kentucky. Team is obviously, as you can see on the screen, nothing too out of the ordinary. However, we will be going over the team building process, the team itself, including the EVs, along with matchups and my run throughout the tournament. So if you are interested in that, feel free to stick around. If not, I know a lot of you are only here to get the team itself, so rental code up above, paste down below. Feel free to check it out. But with that, I say we jump right into things. Gonna kick this one off with the team building process, and it did start off with me having the Gabriel Agati Palchua team in the builder with the Incineroar and the Amoonguss here instead of this Sneasler. And it kind of went through a few iterations where the Incineroar Amoonguss, it just felt like it wasn't doing enough. It wasn't really putting on enough pressure. Don't get me wrong, it was a fantastic backbone to the team, and it gave me a lot of chances into certain games where it's like I can just position around here, cycle around here, and it felt really good. But the team was missing that punch. You know, it was really missing a way to get the King Gambit going. I'm not Swords Dance King Gambit. I was AV. I wanted a way to get that going. It was missing a way to get that Dragonite going as well. I was multi-scale. I was able to get intimidated. Yes, you can like mitigate those intimidates with the King Gambit and stuff like that. But overall, it really wanted that way to get something going, that faster piece. And in my opinion, that faster piece deserved to be Sneasler. As soon as I tested Sneasler, among a bunch of other things that I was testing in other slots on that Amoonguss slot as a replacement, Sneasler felt by far the best. Just for the ability to coach, whether it's you're coaching one of your two big dragons, you're coaching Ninetales for a defense boost. You don't really do that. I don't think I actually ever did that once. Or you can, you coach this King Gambit and get that setup going. AV King Gambit is one of my personal favorite ways to run this Pokemon. The Swords Dance one is amazing, but if you can patch the special bulk issue and you can have the attack boost as well, having the AV and the coaching is so strong, especially in a format like this. We are able to just take hits, not die very often, and then punch right back and plow right through, especially on something that can't get intimidated. So coaching your AV King Gambit felt really good. And I became very, very sold on the concept of these first 5 that you see in the builder right now. I was struggling immensely with what to put in this last slot. I had tested stuff like Mousehold. I had tested stuff like Volcarona. I even went to support Volcarona at one point. I think I had a Choice Scarf Basculegion there, which was cool. But I really decided on, after a lot of other testing on a bunch of other things, it was a lot of redirection is so good in this format. I need to have a redirector here. It feels great. If I'm going to walk in with Sneasler and I'm going to coach a bunch of stuff, if Sneasler goes down, I want to be able to keep that thing that I coached alive. So having that redirection, having some sort of follow me Rage Powder support felt important. Hence the Amoonguss jumped right back onto the team, and the Amoonguss now is a very reasonable starting point for what the rest of the team ended up becoming. We'll start there for the EVs and all that. I liked Fairy type redirection. I think Fairy type redirection was amazing in this format for the likes of Dragapult, and I do have 2 Dragon types, so being able to remove both of those darts, put them both into the Amoonguss, as either of my Dragon types really wanted to get going, versus something like that Dragapult, felt like it was very, very helpful. I didn't really test too many other Terras. I added Amoonguss back a couple nights before the tour. Had a bunch of different variants. Excuse me, English is apparently a hard language. But I had a bunch of different variants in the past with Amoonguss. I had Rocky Helmet tested. I had Citrus Berry tested. I ended up settling on Covert Cloak. And it ended up coming in clutch a lot throughout the tournament. Covert Cloak Amoonguss by far my MVP throughout the entire run. It felt really, really solid every single time I brought it into the set. And maybe just because Amoonguss is inherently a good Pokemon, but Covert Cloak overall felt amazing. Didn't really miss the Citrus Berry. Obviously, there's going to be times where you are, but I think Covert Cloak and the way I wanted to pilot this and where I wanted to bring it felt amazing. I'll get into a few specific things about matchups later on, but overall, Pollen Puff, Clear Smog, Rage Powder, Spore, and this was just anti-trickery, right? Any sort of trickery that would want to come my way, whether it's going to be trying to be flinching me, you're going to set up something I wasn't expecting to set up. I have a lot of options for that, right? I can't get flinched. I could clear smog you guys. I'm going to put you guys to sleep. Just tons of options. It became anti-trickery for the team and felt really consistent overall. The defensive investment here, 218 is to be able to live final gambits from Choice Scarf Annihilate. The 220 defensive to 220 plus defense is for the +2 Black Glasses King Gambit Kowtow Cleave. Yes, I am Terra Fairy, but I do not want to be tarrying this piece very often. The two key pieces I'm tarrying on this team are that Dragonite, are that King Gambit. If I'm tarrying anything else, more often than not, it was because I was in a bad position and needed to Terra away from something, as opposed to this is my game plan. So my game plan Terras are that Dragonite, are that King Gambit, just to keep those two well supported. And then if I needed to and I was panicking, Terra Fairy would work. So I didn't want to have to burn a Terra Fairy to just be able to live a King Gambit attack. So being able to survive that was very, very nice. It also allowed me to survive the double up from the Rillaboom King Gambit, which a lot of that, Dragapult, Sneasler, Rillaboom King Gambit team ended up trying to adapt with versus me for at least one game. I saw a lot of that where they go, oh, I'm just going to double this Amoonguss. They're not Citrus Berry. Let me double it. Let me remove it. And because they can't fake me out. Normally, if I would lead this into that team, they would be able to fake me out, and I would be cooked. But because I have the Covert Cloak, I pressure an immediate Spore into the King Gambit. If they approach that route, if they try to lead any sort of fake out, I also just immediately pressure redirection. It was a very good answer to that adaptation of that team going forward, and it just felt great. I wasn't dying to that double up anymore. I was able to survive the things I needed to survive. And just the Amoonguss being that glue to the team, and then obviously just dump the rest into special attack. Oh, sorry, special defense. Excuse me. And, just wanted to be as bulky on the special set as I could, despite dumping a bunch into the physical stuff. Didn't need any special attack. It was going to be negligible anywhere I put it, so there was really no point. Speed, just to underspeed your Ursaluna, made a ton of sense. That's where you want to be. 48, didn't want to go min speed because I do have Icy Wind on the Ninetales, so in case I ended up getting a couple Icy Winds off, having a Amoonguss potentially be faster than a few things could always be fun. Not really built for that, but sometimes, it could come up. It never did, hasn't yet for me anyways, but it definitely could be an option at some point. Moving forward, you could easily go with like a specially defensive Amoonguss if that's your play style here. A lot of things you could change about this. You could drop Clear Smog for Protect if you wanted. Definite options here. Definitely play with the Terra type, maybe, Terra Psychic for like Psy Spam or the like. Just a bunch of options here is basically all I'm trying to say. We'll go over to Sneasler now since it's the next most basic spread we've got. I went Terra Ghost. This could very easily be Terra Stellar, but I liked having the option to make them think twice about playing either the fake out speed ties, or if they were the unburdened version, I wanted to be able to make them go, okay, let me not fake out this Sneasler for a second. So I liked having the Terra Ghost. I didn't really feel as if I was missing out on any sort of boost from the Terra Stellar. I also just had the option to click Terra Ghost Coaching and Protect. That way I didn't have to worry about fake out at all if I wanted to. Never went for it. But I did have the option. Once again, like I said, it's not the key Terra on this team, but it's doing something still without necessarily even needing for me to click the button. So it felt very good. You can use it to get out of E-speeds and stuff like that from Dragonite. So just a very consistent defensive Terra overall. Dire Claw is the funny button. You are going to click it 90% of the time with this Pokemon. Close Combat's your damage option into those steel types that are in the format. Coaching felt great. Fake Out, obviously. Just feels like a smart choice, especially with Poison Touch. I don't like Focus Sash Unburden. I know it's become like this wave that's been hitting the metagame. I really don't like it. It just doesn't feel like something that's actually good to me. It's like, okay, cool, I have my Focus Sash procced. Now I can go Zoom, but I'm just going to die to a single priority move. There is a lot of priority in the metagame right now. I can see it more in a case where you maybe have like priority blocking, or you have faster priority on your side of the field. But on a team like this, Poison Touch went a long way. It's not an immediate damaging team, so being able to maybe get Fake Out Poison Touch, or just a Poison Touch, even if I missed the Dire Claw proc, there's a lot of options there that can slowly start whittling down your opponent, and because of that, it is amazing. Right? It just felt really, really good. Consistent all tournament. I only went 2 for 14 on Dire Claw procs. I don't want to talk about it. Not salty, but Poison Touch was going great all day. In terms of spread, it's max jolly, guys. There's not much else to say. I put the 4 in defense. It was the lowest stat. Felt like it probably gives me the most benefit if I put it into that stat. So other than that, absolutely nothing crazy on this Sneasler here. Move right along to the next basic spread, which is the Garchomp. And Rough Skin, Terra Steel. You can make a case for Terra Water or Terra Fire here, depending on what you're more scared of with this piece. Steel felt really, really good. It allowed me to lead Amoonguss Garchomp into the Dragapult Sneasler stuff very, very easily, very, very commonly. And that actually was my game plan, but we'll get into matchups later. In terms of that, Steel felt good. I ended up locking it in. Tantrum, Earthquake, Dragon Claw, Protect. I think this is all a pretty standard Garchomp moveset, I should say. You can go max here. I went 252, 236, because 236 here is the lowest you can go in order to still get the KO on No Bulk Garchomp on the other side of the field, which just felt like a must. You could bump it up easily to 252 and just forget about all these fancy little 4-4-12, but it looks a little cooler, feels a little bit more polished, and there was definitely some cool things that I could do here. The extra special defense here was always nice. I don't think it actively changed anything. When I first built the team, some of my spreads mattered where to align, where if I had the 12 in SPDF instead of the 12 in HP, when you average the defense into special defense with another couple of my other Pokemon, it would actually force P2 to get the physical boost other than special. I just kind of left it. I didn't see a need for it. It doesn't work out like that anymore on this team, but back in the day when I built the spread, that's what it was for. And I had no real business changing it. Didn't want to creep anywhere closer to 185. I technically could have, because it would make me take less percentage of my total HP for every Life Orb tick, which is another option. But once again, you could easily go 252 here. This is all minor optimizations, and I'm probably yapping for no real reason right now. That's a Garchomp, guys. There's not much there. In terms of Dragonite here, once again, I wanted to take the concept of using multi-scale but still having pressure along with having speed. I really like the concept of having speed on this Dragonite. There was a little bit of time where I was testing the scale shot sets with the loaded dice and I'm able to get that speed boost, and I really liked the immediate speed that Dragonite showcased on that team, and it felt really good. So I ended up keeping it when I went back to the Lumberry set, which just did feel a little bit better on a team composition such as this one. And you could easily say I don't need 130. You could easily drop this down to like a 125, a 126. You could even go down to like a 118, 119, 120 area, and that's perfectly fine in tag team with the Icy Wind stuff. And it's probably all you'll ever need, and put some more bulk on this thing. I liked having speed. I liked being the faster Dragonite. I liked potentially being the faster Dragonite than even some of these scale shot ones. That felt fun as well. And I liked outpacing Pelipper in rain. I don't care if you are timid anymore on your Pelipper. I am still outpacing you here, and that felt really good. I actually outpaced a fair chunk of Rillabooms as well, because a lot of them hit that 129 mark just to creep the timid Pelipper. And then you outpace those guys too. You get the Terra Flying, you send a Terra Blast. It feels pretty good overall. Once again, I did miss out on a little bit of the bulk, but with multi-scale, if I just positioned that properly, I was never really a threat of dying immediately, and I'm pretty much getting damage off a lot of the time. And you pair that with coaching, you don't really die too often. 204 was that attack bump as well, and you need that for like Terra Flying to like pick up Amoonguses and all that kind of stuff. So didn't want to go lower than that. Didn't really necessarily need to go higher. Felt pretty good. It's a pretty standard spread. Once again, you can drop the speed if you want to pick up this team and give it a shot. You don't need all that speed, but overall pretty fine. King Gambit though, I will stand by my speed on King Gambit. In terms of oh wait, hold up, I didn't do move choice on Dragonite. Sorry. Dragonite, Terra Blast, E-Speed, Low Kick, Protect. I had debated Ice Spinner. I had debated Stomping Tantrum. This Pokemon has 4 move slot syndrome. It probably wants 6, maybe 7 attacks if you can fit them. I had to lock something for the team. Terra Blast for Terra Flying, must have. E-Speed, I was almost going to give up on, but it's just so nice to pick off those sashes, especially on things like Sneasler, which do give this team trouble if not played properly. Or, you know, you get into a bad position, being able to just break that sash is very, very nice. And then Low Kick was probably the one I was going to drop, if anything. But that's Ice Spinner that could go there, Stomping Tantrum that could go there. You could also alternatively drop Protect and put like an Ice Spinner or a Stomping Tantrum there as well. Very, very valid. But the way the team ended up shaping up, I only had 2 Protects. And I do not want to run into a regional tournament with only 1 Protect. Just a personal preference. You could probably drop it. Once again, you have multi-scale. So the necessity for Protect, not really needed. But the ability to Protect plus coaching, very, very cool. I enjoyed having that option. In terms, back to the King Gambit, like I said, I kept this thing's speed. This is pretty much your standard AV King Gambit. I went Terra Water. It's just a very strong defensive typing. Very, very good into some of the rain cores where you need to deal with Basculegion to be able to sucker punch that in a late game. And just generally one of the best defensive typings in the game, in my opinion. Overall, standard moveset, guys, there's not a lot to talk about here. The only thing I'm really going to talk about on the spread is my speed stat, and I want it to be the fastest possible King Gambit without hurting my chances in a potential Trick Room matchup. And I came up with 80 speed because it underspeeds the min speed in DDs that may pop up. It's a very unlikely scenario, I think, where the Ndidi is actually going to hit that 81 speed stat, but I didn't want to be in a spot where I was faster than that, and then all of a sudden, I couldn't knock out that Ndidi under Trick Room before it got something like a Dazzling Gleam to potentially break a Sash off, right? I wanted to be slower than Ndidi, but I also wanted to be faster than a bunch of other King Gambits. So I went with 76, and I was pretty consistently one of the faster King Gambits, I would go ahead and say. Felt pretty good. It also lives the Ursaluna Blood Moon Earth Power from the Life Orb variant, which in my opinion was a must. If I'm running around AV on my Steel type, I want to make sure I have the ability to survive that and just basically force those types of compositions to double into this King Gambit to remove the piece. And that just normally, if they're doubling into Gambit, it's opening up an opening somewhere else. Simple as that. Definitely wanted that calc. I was very adamant on having this 188.36 as my bulk. Had a little bit more as well before I started creeping in speed, but the more I played, I was like, ooh, I'm still getting outsped. Let's add some more speed, right? Just wanted to start creeping up, but once again, this was pretty much my limit. I was not going faster than this. Ninetales, don't take this spread. Do not take this spread. I love the concept of this spread. I absolutely hate the execution of this spread. It's serviceable. It's very, very strong. It does its job. Don't get me wrong, and I'll get into in a second. First off, just your normal specs, Ninetales, though. Choice specs, Terra Ice for extra ice damage, Blizzard, Moonblast, Freeze Dry, Icy Wind. That's what you're going to see on this piece more often than not, and that's, of course, what I decided to lock for the team. In terms of the spread, like I said, it was a concept, okay? I loved having the bulk. I loved being fast, and the concept was I hit like a wet noodle anyways. So, like, I might as well live an attack and then at least get 2 attack equivalent of a wet noodle off as opposed to just getting 1. Also, technically getting a second Blizzard off gives me more chances to get freezes, which once again puts a little bit more RNG in my favor, much like Sneasler does with the Dire Claw. However, I didn't find myself missing out on things with the special attack. I was pretty bulky right away with my Ninetales, so I'm not really, like, missing out on damage. You probably do miss out on damage, don't get me wrong. You probably miss a lot of KOs. But the Terra Ice made up for that, and the way I was playing the team is like Ninetales was going to come in late game. I didn't mind being this low. I would definitely recommend maybe just trying 252 first. It's definitely serviceable, definitely works. But being able to lift stuff like Fake Out into a Dire Claw from a Sneasler, or a Dire Claw into a Poison Tick if they managed to roll the poison, was very nice. It just allowed me to play a little bit more carelessly with the Ninetales and a little bit more aggressive, right? Just being able to go, yep, go ahead. If you want to risk, if you want to click Fake Out, go for it. You want to click Dire Claw, go for it. I'm getting a Blizzard. I'm going to live. I'm really not that concerned. Living Dire Claw is like a double-edged sword though, because like you live the Dire Claw and then you pray that they don't roll the 50, which happened way too often. But we'll get into that when we talk about some of the sets, or some of the matches, I should say. Overall though, team felt very good. Like I said, you could probably just run away 252 here. Overall, very content with how the tournament went as well. We'll get into my run in just a second. But coaching was a huge adjustment here. Like I said, it's pretty much the Agati Palchua 6, but the coaching, I think, makes a world of a difference in how the team functions. It just allows me to get it, whether that's like Sneasler Gambit, it allows you to get Sneasler Dragonite. It gives you that impact mode that your opponent needs to now figure out. Whereas the other team was a lot more reactive when you have the Instant. It's giving you more chances into more things, but I liked having the Sneasler, which put a little bit more pressure on, made my opponent say, hey, hold up, we got to care about this coaching here. We got to care about a +1 Dragonite, a +1 King Gambit. It just put a little bit more pressure on, which is something I definitely liked about this change. But let's get into the tournament run for you guys. I just got my notebook out, guys, so if I'm looking down a lot, that's why. I just want to make sure I'm getting this as accurate as I can for y'all. But, okay, so tournament day started off, we pulled Matt here, and Matt had that Incineroar P2 Ursaluna stuff. And I wasn't really sure if this was going to be a Trick Room team off the bat or if they were going to approach it as a Tailwind team, because they did have the Loaded Dice Tailwind Dragonite set, which was honestly pretty cool, right? It ended up being a very close 3-game set. I'm probably going to brush through a lot of these rather quickly. But pretty much I noticed that I needed to keep an eye on the Goldengo, and I needed to keep an eye on that Ursaluna. If I could keep those two in check, I was generally, more often than not, in a pretty good position. I wanted to put pressure on immediately. I was going with the Ninetales more often than not, just to keep the pressure on the Amoonguss, keep it out of the, keep it off my screen. I don't want to see Amoonguss. Right, Ninetales puts on a lot of pressure immediately. It kind of forces Goldengo onto the board, and if Goldengo is coming onto the board, King Gambit does its job, and that is worked out to a T. Really, really good set. Got a couple of sucker punch calls right, mind games right onto that Goldengo stuff. Very good set, very fun set. Good start to the day, up to 1-0. Moving on, round 2, I played Noah, and Noah had a pretty traditional rain team here with the Incineroar Amoonguss stuff, and it just, I got a lot of reads right in this game, right? So they had Terra Fairy Mouse instead of Terra Ghost. And because they weren't Terra Ghost, I was able to pretty much just lead Sneasler. And just by having Sneasler, I'm able to put pressure on the mice. I didn't lead Sneasler, but I was able to have Sneasler in the back to put pressure on this mouse. I let a lot of Gus Chomp or Sneasler Chomp in this match. This is the kind of matchup you do that for. I don't really remember too much of what happened in this game, but overall, I mean, I didn't really struggle with it too much. My rain matchup is pretty well practiced, so just being able to get Sneasler going, being able to get Chomp into position, you know, Amoonguss if they start leaning on the Basculegion stuff, it's a pretty well positioned game from my end, and in the matchup prep that I had really showcased in this set, and it worked out very, very well. Just no complaints here, pretty consistent all the way through. Easy. I don't want to say easy W, but I got the reads right, got the calls that I needed to make right, and it felt like a very comfortable W. Round 3, we played Sean, and honestly, this matchup was a little RNG, a little hacks improved. Game 1 was pretty close, right down to the wire, and then Game 2, I kind of just won turn 1 when their Talonflame went for Dual Wing Beat and missed. The Talonflame missed a Dual Wing Beat on my Sneasler. Sneasler was able to coaching the Dragonite. I removed the Talonflame immediately. They had no Tailwind for the rest of the match. And my pieces were just able to outpace it at that point, right? And I kept leading Sneasler. I wanted to lead Sneasler because I wanted to put them in a position where I say, hey, you're not going to get Tailwind here. You are either going to try and kill my Sneasler, and if you get it, cool. My Dragonite's getting a Terra Blast into your Talonflame, and then I can E-speed it off later. No Tailwind for you. Or you're going to go for Tailwind, and then you're going to leave my Dragonite with a +1 off a coaching boost, right? So I wanted to pin it in a sense like that. I got the bonus in Game 2 where they just happened to miss the Dual Wing Beat. Dual Wing Beat Talonflame, by the way, pretty cool tech. I saw a lot of actually Dual Wing Beats and Twin Beams throughout the weekend, just overhearing a lot of people running those. So very cool things to see as well. Seeing the meta develop around this like Focus Sash Sneasler. It was a very cool tech to have. I was pretty scared of it. The Ninetales on their end was Focus Sash, so I wasn't as concerned immediately. The Specs one is a lot more concerning for me. But the Focus Sash one, like I said, we've been over Ninetales. It doesn't hit very hard, right? So the Focus Sash one doesn't scare me as much as the Specs one would, coming back in my direction. So I was able to clean up that game, and now we're up to a smooth 3-0 start to the tournament. Round 4, we played Daniel, and Daniel had a pretty cool team, and I was terrified of the Volcarona more than anything else. Because normally versus Sand, I would bench my Dragonite. I would bench my Dragonite. That's the mon I'm looking for. I would bench the Dragonite, and I would leverage like the King Gambit Sneasler stuff. The problem with that was I had to keep an eye on this Volcarona that they had. This Volcarona was a problem. My best way to hit Volcarona with this team is Dragonite. So I have to force Dragonite into these games, and it was a very uphill battle. I'm going to be honest. I did not like this matchup. It was very rough, and I probably lose this matchup in Game 2 if they manage to hit the Heat Wave onto my... I don't remember if there was a Heat Wave they missed or a Rock Slide they missed. They missed one move into my Dragonite, which allowed me to be able to survive the Volcarona on the next turn and be able to kill it off with my Terra Blast. Had I been hit by that, the entire game is different. Not sure if it would have been completely out of my control to pull back, but definitely piloted and allowed me to pull that one back. Game 3, I got a pretty good call because they ended up leading Excadrill, and I managed to get to a spot where I was able to end up low kicking a Primarina, switching into a T-Tar. Got the call right, didn't give the T-Tar the free switch, and with that call, was able to seal up that game. So very happy I made that call. But overall, really rough matchup. Got kind of bailed Game 2. Definitely bailed Game 2. Still unsure if I would have ended up losing that on that end, but really cool team from Daniel's end for sure. Round 5, we played Matt. Matt's a good friend of mine, fellow Canadian. But Torkoal P2, Hatterene Amoonguss stuff. It was actually Effect Spore, Focus Sash Amoonguss, which honestly gave me more issues than anything else because it really made me second guess what I wanted to do into the matchup, right? My normal ways to get through Amoonguss, I can send an Iron Head, see if I'm going to get the flinch on it. I can send a couple Dire Claws, see what's going on there, right? But the fact that it was Effect Spore was terrifying for me. Not that I should have focused my game plan and should have changed my game plan versus it, because in game 1 I still did just kind of send my damage. I was going for Ninetales stuff to try and get around the Effect Spore. Overall, the P2 and the Torkoal proved to be too much for me. My biggest answer to the Terra Fighting P2 is to Terra my Dragonite, but I can't do that in this matchup because Torkoal requires me to bring AV Kingambit, and it requires me to Terra Water my AV Kingambit. Without that, I'm kind of just cooked by the Torkoal stuff, so I have to leverage that. I tried to leverage it, couldn't quite get there. It was a really good 3-game set. Matt got the upper hand in that one, and now we're down to 4-1 on today. Not a bad start still. Need to find a way to re-lock in. Round 6, we played Philip, and they were rocking that that Michael their best 6, but with the Electabuzz over the Magmar stuff. Just a standard composition that I'm expecting to see. And I went Amoonguss Garchomp. That is my lead. I'll get into that later on when we talk about matchups, but that's my lead. Got a lot of calls right in this game. Things just kind of seemed to go my way. I had matchups, I had my lines into this team, and I got them to work. Simple as that. Pretty good game overall. Good games to fill up, and now we're 5-1, and we need one more to advance. Now, go over to round 7, and I see Liam's team over here, and immediately I'm kind of sweating. The Gengar scares me. The Gengar is 1 point faster than Ninetales, assuming they're max speed. They had Icy Wind, so I assumed they were max speed. They ended up not bringing it, though, so very happy that we didn't have to see that piece. But overall, they were trying to leverage that, the Incineroar, the Goldengo, which is a very valid option for them to leverage, and I think they need to do that as well. I just think they may have needed to bring Gengar there as well. I managed to deal with their Sneasler pretty well, and Kingambit was pretty much home free throughout the set. It felt pretty good overall. I think there was a couple turns that you get wrong, you switch up. It's probably just kind of cooked back in my direction for me. But overall, pretty good set. Managed to deal with the Goldie. We are now 6-1 on the day. And with 6-1 on today, we have now made it to day 2, just like we did in Baltimore. And the big thing here now is I ended up playing another member of my building group. So this one was fun. It wasn't quite a mirror match. We ended up settling on different things going into the tour. But we do play Logan here in round 8. And this win is crucial. The difference between going into day 2 at 7-1 and going into day 2 at 6-2 obviously is one win, but it means you have to win one less game on day 2, and that is huge. Instead of going into day 2 having to win 3 games, if I were to win this game, I would only have to go into day 2 trying to win 2 games. Obviously, I would try to win all 3 anyways, but I would only need to win 2 to make top cut. So this win here would be amazing. Game 1, once again, just kind of actually deviated from my plan because there's safety goggles Kingambit on this team. So I had to deviate from my plan a little bit. Couldn't really leverage Amoonguss. So I went with Sneasler Ninetales, and immediately my Ninetales got Dire Clawed, went to bed. Can't really do much. Couldn't cycle out of that one. Lost game 1. Easy. Game 2, I tried to go with Gust Ninetales to try and make them, force them into the Gust, maybe bring their positions in a little bit differently. I got that to work pretty well. Forced their Dragapult off the field as they removed my Amoonguss from the field. Then the following turn, I brought in my Kingambit, and they went Dire Claw Sleep into my Ninetales again. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I don't know how I pulled this back. But because I had scared the Dragapult off, my Kingambit was able to keep the leverage going. They were never able to actually fully switch in their Dragapult anymore, so I managed to pull that one back. Game 3, I went Tails Sneasler back to what I did game 1, and I said, hey, you're not going to do the same thing. You're going to try and play this speed tie on my Sneasler. You're going to try and remove my Sneasler turn 1. You do not want this on the board as much as I do not want your Sneasler on the board. Managed to hard switch into Garchomp, get the Rough Skin chip damage to break their sash. They had gone CC into my Sneasler, so they lost their defenses as well. I sent the Blizzard. Sneasler went down, and from there I was able to just leverage King Gambit. Because once Sneasler's gone, you can leverage King Gambit in this type of matchup, and more often than not, you're going to seal that game up relatively quickly once that Sneasler's gone with that AV King Gambit. It does a lot in this matchup. That was it. Moving on to day 2. Day 2, round 9, aka round 1 of day 2, but round 9 overall, we play James Beck, and they had the Dortmund winning team with Whimsicott, Annihilate, Garchomp, Hydreigon, Goldengo, and Clefable, and this is where I really like Sneasler over Incin. I struggled a lot versus this team when I had the Incineroar because I just wasn't able to bring the pieces that I needed, which was Fake Out and my way to hit Whimsicott versus the Annihilate. I could not do that. So having Sneasler was very nice into this matchup. Game 1 went probably as best as I could have asked for. I did give them a win con in game 1 at the end. It was basically a low HP Hydreigon, a low HP King Gambit. Low HP Hydreigon, low HP Garchomp on their end. And I needed to just Sucker Punch. They were both in Sucker Punch range. I suckered the Hydreigon, but I should have suckered the Garchomp, because if I sucker the Hydreigon, I leave them a win condition, which is to basically win a Garchomp Speed Tie and crit an Earthquake into my Garchomp. That's exactly what happened. I Sucker Punched the Hydreigon. They won the Garchomp Speed Tie, Earthquaked, and happened to crit my Garchomp and took game 1. That's an out I just shouldn't have given them. Once again, it's an out that probably doesn't happen very often because they have to roll a 50% of the Speed Tie and then the 4.25 or whatever it is for the critical hit. But it's not an option that should have happened. I should always just Sucker Punch the Garchomp and simply Dragon Claw over onto the right side into the Hydreigon slot. Gave that to them. Can't really afford to do that, especially in day 2 of a regional. But frankly, I still think I would have liked to have a game 3 here. Got absolutely cooked game 2. They played really, really well. And they got a cool little side Drain Punch off where I thought I had a pretty good pin where I could hard switch in Garchomp, and they would go down to Poison that I had gotten from a Poison Touch earlier. They got a cool side Drain Punch off, healed themselves up quite enough, just enough to be able to live that tick of Poison, which I thought they weren't going to be able to do. And with that, that was just enough to send me down to the 7-2 tables, So good games to James there, but they definitely deserve that. Also, shout out to James, guys. If you are somehow on my channel and don't know James's YouTube channel, I'll link that down below. But I'd be shocked if none of you guys were there already. But anyways, round 10. We got Logan, and Logan gave me one of the most annoying looking teams I've seen in a while. This was like, it wanted to be Psy Spam, but it wasn't. It was Choice Scarf, Mail, and DD, Sneasler, Basculegion, and Rain stuff, and it was just like, felt very coin flippy, felt very lead heavy. I don't like matchups like that. I like playing games where, I have a couple turns to settle into things. Unfortunately, I just got the lead wrong immediately game 1 and got absolutely cooked. Nothing else to say there, just I got cooked. I will fully admit that I got cooked. There's nothing else to say. Got cooked game 1. Game 2, I adapted what I thought was pretty well. Got to an end game where I'm like, you know what? We're chilling. If they wave crash my Dragonite here, it's fine. I can't risk switching in my Ninetales. I need it. I can't lose that Weather War versus the Pelipper in the back. And I can't afford to have them save Basculegion as I switch in Ninetales, because then I'm cooked, because Dragonite does not beat Basculegion. So I said, if they stay on the board, they can have my Dragonite in exchange for their Basculegion. We're chilling. If they don't stay on the board, it's whatever. Dragonite gets big damage off with a Terraflying Terra Blast. So force that. They end up taking my Dragonite. Basculegion goes down. I click Dire Claw into their Sneasler. I get nothing. They Dire Claw my Sneasler. Immediately roll the sleep. It's fine. It's whatever. Ninetales hits the board. My Ninetales, because I do have the bulk, can live this attack if they are jolly and they are faster than me. I'll probably live. If they are adamant, they are slower than me, and my Ninetales should be able to pick up that KO. However, I was slower, and as planned, I do survive. And I got Dire Claw slept again. So back-to-back Dire Claw slept to remove me from that game. Once again, would have liked the game 3. Don't know what would have happened in game 3, but I would have liked, the chance to play game 3. That I think I deserved after adapting game 2. One of the more frustrating sets from the weekend. And at this point, guys, I was incredibly tilted going into round 11 versus Daniel here. And it was just a tough matchup versus Daniel. Daniel played it really, really well. There was a spot in game 1 where they actually let me get back into the game potentially, had Ninetales just not taken a second turn of sleep. Unfortunately, I was not quite as lucky, and I could not wake up from that turn of sleep. So, in game 1, round 9, I give my opponent a minuscule chance to get out of a game. They get it. My opponent gives me a decent chance to get out of a game, and I can't get it. So just luck was not on my side. Not really complaining about that. Daniel definitely played that set better than I did in any way, shape, or form. But it just didn't feel like RNG was equal for me day 2. Not complaining. Got a lot of things I could clean up on. We'll get really quickly into matchups for you now. So with the matchups, guys, I'm gonna try and actually go a little bit quicker through these. A lot of these will be skimmed over pretty quickly. I know I always say this and then I talk about matchups for like 15 minutes. I don't know how I'm going to do there. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet, try to hit just the important ones here. But I feel like a lot of this was kind of already talked about throughout the video anyways. But here goes nothing. Actually, one quick thing. If you guys are looking for this doc, because last time I did this, everybody was like, yo, where'd you get this document? Is it public? Yes, the document is public. It is up on my Twitter. I'm not going to link it down below, but my Twitter will be down below. It is the pinned tweet there, so feel free to check it out. Try it out for yourself. It's a project that I've been working on, and it feels like a very fun way and a very nice, aesthetically pleasing way to plan out matchups. So if you're looking for it, like I said, check out my Twitter. It's pinned there. Overall, back to what I need to do, and that's run through these matchups really quickly. Like I said, with the Michael Derbest stuff here and his normal Dragapult balance, you could call it. It's Amoonguss Garchomp. You can try to prank them with Sneasler Dragonite. You don't really need to do that. Amoonguss Garchomp is giving you enough in this matchup to feel out what's going on. There's a few things that kind of do hurt, but it gives you the ability to reposition here. Amoonguss Garchomp covers a Magmar Kingambit stuff. It covers the Rillaboom stuff. The only thing that really changes that is if there's the Safety Goggles Kingambit variant. Which then, once again, then you can probably just try to leverage Ninetales and stuff like that. There's still ways to go about it, but this is the general game plan into that kind of stuff. Into rain, it's a lot of Sneasler, Garchomp, Ninetales. And normally I like bringing Amoonguss game 1 in case they try to rock that Basculegion mode. You don't necessarily need Amoonguss in this matchup. You can definitely get rid of it maybe for something like that Kingambit or a Dragonite if you see an opening. But overall, it's the Sneasler, Garchomp, Ninetales. Those are the 3 you're bringing. Those are the bulk of that matchup there. Ape Dortmund stuff, once again, I'm able to go Sneasler, Kingambit. Terra Water, Coaching, Kingambit almost immediately more often than not, and just work my way through that. It feels very, very strong. It's pretty much what I tried to do versus James in round 9, and it works more often than not. You just got to kind of leverage it. It's a little bit of a weirder thing as long as you're keeping the pressure up as well, but overall it's a pretty decent matchup I think for us, probably maybe even a little bit favored I would say, but overall they still definitely have options. I don't think anything on this matchup doc is like, yeah, this is going to win me the game 100% of the time. It's basically just giving myself best options into things, and that's a lot of what I build. When I build teams that give me chances, and that's what we're seeing here. So none of these things are like, yeah, you have to do this, but these give you the best options I find into the vast majority of what they can potentially bring. In terms of the, that protect the queen sort of thing where you're either setting up the Annihilate or they're setting up the Archaludon and then like bringing in Sinister to heal with the Grimmsnarl screens. The important thing is here to keep the pressure on. Whether that's Sneasler, Dragonite, Garchomp, Ninetales, or Sneasler, Garchomp, Dragonite, Ninetales, the important thing here is to keep that pressure on. You should be able to out-pressure them, whether you're coaching yourself up, launching close combats, launching Dire Claws, potentially getting procs. That's the matchup here. You just want to keep putting pressure on. Obviously, there was that Klefki version that did well as well from Stefan, but, you want to just keep the pressure up. It's the same concept. It's basically the same mon, just with a few different resistances. So you just want to keep that pressure up in these kinds of matchups. Don't let them get set up on you. Just find a piece to keep the pressure on. Put that pressure on. Your faster pieces. You have the faster pieces. So as long as you keep the pressure on, you should be okay in that matchup. The Palchua Agati stuff, once again, a little bit tricky to try and maneuver. Probably one of the worst matchups for the team. But you have to leverage Sneasler. Dragonite, Kingambit, and Ninetales, I think, are the best option there. You can go Garchomp if you see an opening for that, or you feel like, they're not bringing Amoonguss. Garchomp is very valid here as well. I like bringing Dragonite because oftentimes they do try to leverage like Ninetales, Amoonguss stuff into you. So having Sneasler, Dragonite, having Dragonite get set up, and get an immediate +1 if they lead Ninetales, and then you just Terra Blast, you blow your way through their team. You can low kick the Kingambit if they bring it in, force a Terra there. Lots of options. Still a pretty scary matchup. I would go ahead and say this is probably one of the worst matchups for the team. I didn't really get too many chances to actually test this line. I found it the best in my minimal terms of prep, but overall there's definitely if you find a better line, I wouldn't be too shocked overall. We can definitely leverage our super fast King Gambit though, so definitely keep that in mind. Flamigo and friends, P2 instant Amoonguss is actually pretty tough. Once again, I want to keep the pressure up and try to stop Trick Room. So having Ninetales Sneasler with Garchomp and King Gambit actually works the best, because you're able to go Fake Out if they lead Amoonguss. Porygon 2, you can Fake Out, you can threaten big Blizzard damage off, and you just try to keep things in your favor. You have the AV King Gambit in the back and a Garchomp for the protect piece, AV King Gambit to help stall out the turns. And it's just going to have to be play better. It's a little bit more of a difficult matchup, but overall it should be fine to pull through. Garchomp, Porygon 2 stuff. Once again, just you want to keep the pressure up. You want to keep the pressure on the Amoonguss. And a lot of the times you can go Sneasler Dragonite. You can opt for like a Garchomp Dragonite if you want, but that's pretty weak to Intimidate and Fake Out on lead as well. Like if they just lead instant into that, it's a little spooky. So this kind of felt pretty good overall. Dondozo stuff is a little weird, but like I said, you have the Amoonguss, you have the Clear Smog, you can leverage that. I find Ninetales Sneasler is a pretty good like 2 throwaway pieces in certain matchups, especially when they have the Dragonite. You can kind of send that in and say, you know what, go for it. King Gambit can also be made a case for, but obviously this variant, has that Annihilate. But I think on like the Glamora variant, with like the 2-2-2, the more 2-2-2 approachy ones, King Gambit makes a lot more sense there, I think, than probably something like a Garchomp. You probably don't need that piece nearly as much as you would, as much as you'd want it in this matchup here. In terms of Psy Spam, this is pretty much just getting Ninetales Dragonite into position to click Icy Wind, Terra Blast, or just any sort of damage output involved. If they lead the Indeedee Delphox stuff, you can just go Icy Wind, Terra Blast, remove a piece. You can go Icy Wind, Earthquake if you wanted to go with the Garchomp option. But overall, with the bulk on Ninetales, you can potentially live the Pop Bomb from the mice as well. So you basically say, go ahead and pick one. If you pick Ninetales, it could just be incorrect and you can survive it. If they pick Dragonite, you lose Dragonite, but then Ninetales, more often than not, I think you want to be clicking Icy Wind, because what would happen there is if they lead the Pop Bomb mouse, they take the Dragonite, you can Icy Wind, Garchomp can come in, and then you just pressure big damage out that way, and you can go from there. As you can tell, it was a little indecisive on this matchup here. There's a lot going on there. You can definitely pick what you like best. Play around with it. I don't play it too often, so I wasn't too worried about it outside of unless I played like, one of the, the chef's building group there. But overall, that's kind of the concept, the way I would approach that. The 2 Komoa matchups, guys, I'm not going to talk about. Figure it out. You lose. I haven't been able to figure it out. You can somehow play, to your anti-setup line with Amoonguss. If you can try to leverage that, it's cool. I do find trying to keep pressure on immediately with Sneasler Dragonite is very, very good. Garchomp can come depending on the Terra, but overall, if they have the Ninetales like this one over here, it's really bad. I can't leverage Chomp. If they have the, the Volcarona Indeedee Drifblim over here, that was good in Dortmund. Also very, very scary. Very, very tough to position. So as a whole, just if you can figure it out, great. I haven't been able to. I've made do in some of these matchups, but it's a pretty ugly one to try and get through. Vivillon Garchomp pretty much fallen off now, but you can just keep the pressure on with Garchomp Dragonite. Sneasler comes into back more often than not. You just got to be careful if they're going to try to lead P2. If they start leading the Porygon 2, you do have to adapt a little bit and start covering some more of your common, your common Porygon 2 matchups there with maybe like a Ninetales on lead is pretty good as well. Like a Ninetales Sneasler option goes pretty good into this. As well, Agati stuff is pretty much the exact same thing as the Palachua stuff. Matty Morgan P2 stuff, once again, you can go Sneasler, King Gambit. You can go Sneasler, Ninetales as well. Both very valid options. Same thing as always with this, the Sinistra Annihilate stuff. You just got to keep the pressure on, as we were talking about earlier. You see the 4 here, same 4 as discussed above. Solo Dozo stuff, once again, there's not much of a change here from, your standard Dragapult matchup. I did change the game plan here predominantly because I feel like the Dozo kind of does force you to, like if they lead the Dozo, the Amoonguss Garchomp does kind of end up on a back foot a little bit. Because you do have to start switching, and you don't really have that many safe switch-ins, so it's a little uglier there. But overall, you could probably just get away with your main game plan there as well. Sneasler Dragonite, I do find works for the most part there as well. Because then you can coach. It's a little rough if they lead like Sneasler Pult, because you kind of get outpaced a little bit. But as a whole, you're probably okay. What else do we need here? I'm not gonna I'm not gonna worry about any of this. I know Wolf's Yan Mega team was around, so that we can talk about this. Don't ask why there's a Polarath here. My friend put that on, and I was like, you know what? I'll put a spread in for it anyways. I really don't, I really don't know why that team's there. Anyways, Yan Mega Gaming's chilling. We can chill versus Yan Mega, right? We've got the Ninetales, and I find a lot of times going Ninetales Garchomp forces their hand a little bit. They can get Trick Room up, so you do have to be careful if they try to leverage the Porygon in that route, which they probably do more often than not, I would assume. Just be careful about that. You may want to try and leverage a Moongus at some point, but a Moongus doesn't have, it's actually probably not that bad actually. So maybe something like a Ninetales Amoonguss or a Ninetales Sneasel with a Moongus in the back is a cool adaptation. I didn't really map this one out. I kind of just, faked my way through it on this matchup doc and said, you know what, if I play it, I'll figure it out then. Never ended up playing it, thankfully. But I do think you have the tools between a Moongus, Ninetales, Garchomp, Sneasler, Dragonite. You have the tools to win this matchup for sure. And as I said at the opening, you guys can tell based on the way I'm talking, it's just a lot of yapping going on right now. It's not really a team that's like, yeah, these are the matchups. You do this every single time. Go for it. There's a lot of hey, yeah, your opponent's leaning it towards this way. We can adapt with this now. And a lot of that is just finding that feel out process that gives you a best chance of winning the game one, which is what these are, right? There's a lot of adaptations that can be made, a lot of variations of different teams in the format that definitely warrant different changes and different approaches from your side of the field. So I think having that is very, very nice as a whole, right? And this is how I like to approach matchup plans. If I dedicate rigid plans, it becomes very, very difficult. I find myself trapped by these rigid plans. It's like, oh, I don't have this planned, but it's impossible to have everything planned. So I find having these more, these loose, these more adaptable plans as games develop, and having the options that are the best lead into the general common option of the team feels a little bit better. Now I'm probably just talking nonsense though. Gonna close this one out real quick with some shout outs. So first off, Nick, Rafe, thank you so much. Appreciate both of you building a team with me, running some ideas around, bouncing some ideas back and forth as well. Don't come to this final version without you, so thank you for that. Of course, the Small of Garden for listening to me complain about for like 3 weeks that I didn't have a team, that I couldn't find a team. So appreciate for y'all support there, and of course this helped me stay level-headed throughout the whole tournament as well. But with that, guys, if you are enjoying this type of content, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel, and of course I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm gonna get on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all in a future video.